Disney ruins everything. Beloved characters, theme parks, franchises, child stars, even the once respected Nat Geo, but most especially your childhood. Remember the golden era of Disney? Hit after hit after hit, The Lion King, Toy Story, Hercules, The Parent Trap, Mulan, A Bug's Life. The good times kept rolling even into the early 2000s. Now think about what we're being punished with today. And an endless lineup of soulless live-action remakes that play on the fragile heartstrings of our nostalgia. All to squeeze every last penny from you. Everything Disney touches turns sick with poison, and with each failure pushed out before our eyeballs is another nail in the coffin of this once mighty empire. For the first time, Disney has to convince us to watch their content, but we're spoiled rotten with choices, so we don't have to put up with such garbage mediocrity. Or do we? Because what choice do we really have when Disney owns pretty much everything? The sun has set on the golden era of Pixar. It was a legendary 15-year run that produced a slew of creative excellence, each a masterpiece in its own right. But its extraordinary achievements began even further back in the 80s, when Pixar was a small company making a name for itself with special effects produced for films and award-winning animated shorts. This caught the eyes of Walt Disney Company, and in 1991, the company and Pixar signed a historic $26 million deal that brought into existence the first feature-length animated film that was completely computer-generated. In 1995, Toy Story was released and redefined the animation landscape and our childhoods forever. But for the decade or so that followed, the two companies disagreed on everything. Negotiations even ceased in 2004, with then CEO Steve Jobs declaring that Pixar was actively seeking other partners. Finally, in 2006, Disney agreed to buy Pixar for $7.4 billion. But of course the sale was inevitable. Disney has had nothing but blockbusters since teaming up with Pixar. It delivered brilliant storytelling and animation, all while breathing life and soul into characters that transcended movie screens. All this was possible thanks to the Brain Trust, Pixar's secret weapon to rooting out mediocrity. Each Pixar movie would be workshopped through the Brain Trust, led by honest, candid conversations between trusted colleagues. This feedback mechanism meant the willingness to scrap projects, push deadlines, change scripts, and even replace directors. It was a safe space to be creative. When the merger happened, Disney Animation established a similar system dubbed the Story Trust. But the meetings were reportedly more polite due to concerns about hurt feelings. By bringing ego into the equation and with ruthless cost-cutters breathing down necks, Story Trust could only operate up to a much lower ceiling, even with all that talent. And with Disney's iron grip on Pixar, the studio has nowhere to go but down. But these concerns must have been vetted before the deal was inked, right? The harsh reality is that even with all the shiny promises of separate brand identities and cultures post-merger, the problem lies within the very act of Disney buying Pixar. The deal meant a lack of competition between the two largest market players, which stifled creativity and fostered complacency, all while other animation studios raced ahead. Disney took the shortcut by buying Pixar to inherit its creativity, instead of building it organically. Most ideas at Pixar were generated in-house, but at Disney Animation, agencies or outsiders could get involved, like Jennifer Lee, who was brought in to work on Wreck-It Ralph. As time passed, the Disney poison seeped into the Pixar brand itself, and thus began the downward spiral. But up until 2017, there was one man stalling the eventual decay: John Lasseter. He was the creative force behind some of the most iconic treasures, but was forced out following accusations of sexual misconduct. Lasseter was succeeded by Pete Docter, who served up respectable hits, but the studio still hasn't regained its footing or its soul. Since Lasseter's departure, we've been flooded with watered-down sequels and uninspired originals. Perhaps the bar has been set too high for a sequel to stand as tall, if not taller, than the original. But it has been done before, though the fifth one might be overkill. Pixar has even been trying to distract us with the heavy lean on technology. Yes, we can see every strand of hair, but when art is prioritized over the craft of storytelling, the result is clear to the audience. There is no story here. And so we're stuck in this loop of predictable, disappointing Pixar tropes. Disney is too big to fail. Or so it thinks. Following the acquisition of Pixar, Disney went on to collect a lot more Infinity Stones of its own, even the once respected Nat Geo. But these power moves have raised major concerns of an increasingly homogenized media landscape. Disney may have convinced itself that it's invested in diversified content, but with Disney sanitizing everything before it is absorbed into the House of Mouse, there is no room for brand individuality. In trying to squeeze every dollar out of every eyeball, Disney makes content for everyone, and in doing so, it makes content for no one. No wonder every Marvel movie feels the same, and every Pixar film echoes the same hollowness. And so the audience fatigue sets in because we don't want an oversaturation of new content from recycled properties. We want novelty. And with subscriber losses accelerating, one can only hope that Disney might finally be grasping the true meaning of quality over quantity. Disney is also willing to sacrifice a lot for the sake of bolstering its streaming platform. Back in 2007, Netflix dominated the on-demand video streaming scene, with Hulu and Amazon close behind. 12 years later in 2019, Disney Plus tried to play catch-up through its vault of classic and extended catalog. But the handling of Disney Plus has been embarrassingly sloppy. Soul, Luca, and Turning Red were originally set for theatrical releases, but went straight to Disney Plus instead, and not surprisingly, all flopped. Sure, it might be fair to cut Disney some slack as it tried to deliver content in an inflexible environment, but Disney had its own agenda. It was trying to grow its subscriber base aggressively. Its streaming release strategy was a calculated money grab to entice new subscribers, but it came at a devastating long-term blow, as it conditioned the audience to expect these very expensive films for free on Disney Plus and dulled the rush to watch films right now. And so, even when Disney pivoted back to its theatrical release strategy, its films all still flopped. The studio also seemed to punish original ideas by sending them straight to streaming. All while Lightyear, part of an established brand, was granted a theatrical release. It's a clear signal of the company's lack of faith in originals, and this release pattern has reportedly left employees feeling demoralized. With films like Mulan and Raya having been released at a $29.99 premiere access cost, it raised the question of why certain films entered the Disney Plus library for free. Disney also fumbled its simultaneous release of high-profile films in theaters and through premiere access. Scarlett Johansson even sued Disney for sacrificing her box office residuals just to grow its fledgling streaming service. Yup. In true Disney fashion, the corporate monster shows just how much it values its talent. We've tolerated a lot of crap in honor of our precious childhood, but this just might be the final blow, because Disney is blaming you for its colossal box office disasters. Yup, the cartoon gloves came off when Disney decided to play a vicious game of blame deflect to explain its recent failures. Lightyear, the spin-off nobody asked for, was an absolute buzzkill. This was supposed to be the movie that made Andy from Toy Story want a Buzz Lightyear toy in the first place. But we realized early on, this isn't an origin story about our Buzz, and as soon as he opened his mouth, we knew that this wasn't the charmingly neurotic toy that we all know and love. They just shared the same costume. Tim Allen is Buzz Lightyear, and his gaping absence from the sci-fi spin-off meant that Chris Evans' casting as Buzz is nothing more than a contrived Avenger insert. But of course the casting snub was intentional. Disney has always distanced itself from controversial elements. But with Lightyear's $106 million loss, not bringing back Tim Allen to Toy Story 5 would be a death sentence. Disney is also realizing that its woke optics have weakened its money-making position. In the plight to win public approval and prove its progressiveness, Disney has been accused of forcing diversity into pre-existing IPs instead of taking chances on new stories from minority creators. And the company has been quick to blame racism for the poor reception of The Little Mermaid, especially in Asian countries. And yes, it is unrealistic not to factor in the race card, but Chinese viewers have also complained about film length, lack of originality, and the poor design of Ariel's sidekicks. I mean, have you seen Flounder? And Sony's Across the Spider-Verse was also well received in the China box office. When nostalgia bait is dangled before us, stripped of its timeless element, then repackaged into nothing more than a casting facelift, all we get is a wasteland of sequels, remakes, and reboots that appear progressive without actually being progressive. But of course, we're to blame. Something is rotten in the House of Mouse. Layoffs abound, political feuds brewing, writers brushed off, stocks in freefall, and its parks no longer the happiest place on earth. Leave it to Disney to ruin everything. But this downfall has always been lurking in the wings because of its predictable behavior. Buy the goose for stupid money, slaughter it with no mercy, then blame everyone for having no golden eggs, all while hiding behind a veneer of entertainment, if you can call it that. But if it were to break the cycle, could it turn things around and rekindle the magic that touched our hearts once upon a time? Or is this empire doomed for collapse? Only time will tell, and it will come sooner than you think. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.